Intel's 10th gen Core series processors are finally upon us. Yes, this is the new Comet Lake-S processors, and look at the packaging. They actually cared to put it in a relatively nice box this time around, which already shows that they care more about this launch than they did with Cascade Lake-X, which I believe those samples came to me in like a piece of toilet paper or something. You know, before toilet paper was rare and valuable. They wouldn't make that mistake now. But anyway, this is somewhat of an interesting launch because it's still 14 nanometer. It's just another plus on the almost endless stream of pluses that follow it. But their new flagship, the Core i9-10900K, is now sporting 2 extra cores and 4 extra threads over its predecessor, the 9900K, bringing it to 10 cores and 20 threads. Even though it's yet another refresh of the same architecture, I'm still somewhat excited to test it out with the new core and thread count. That is, of course, if they gave me one. I'm not exactly sure what's in this box. We're gonna open it together for the first time. Oh, ooh, okay. Interesting. Let's turn this into an ASMR video. No, let's not. Okay, I think this comes out like so. All right, fun. Ooh, okay, look, I think we did get it. I'm assuming that this is the 10900K, and then here we've got the 10600K, the Core i5, which is a 6-core, 12-thread CPU. Let's open this one first. Gaming happens with Intel. Gotta love the cheesy marketing lines they put on their packaging. All right, come out of here. Come on, baby. Let's go. Come on, man. Ugh. They really pack it in there. Intel was like, make sure there's not a millimeter to spare in that box. We want all the one-handers to suffer. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Oh, okay, yeah, 10600K, Core i5, there it is, baby. Again, 6 cores and 12 threads on this bad boy, which reminds me, pretty much the whole stack, the whole 10th gen stack features hyper-threading support. I think only the Celeron and Pentium chips, the really base level, entry-level ones, are the ones that don't, but everything else, for the most part, even down to the Core i3s, now supports hyper-threading, and that's, of course, to stay competitive with AMD, which has pretty much all of their chips rocking SMT or simultaneous multi-threading, virtually the same thing as hyper-threading, they just call it different names. But that is nice to see Intel trying to level the playing field and definitely make these chips a bit more competitive, particularly in this case, for people who are looking for higher multi-threaded performance. So we're actually not gonna be testing this chip today because, you know, benchmarking takes time, and I actually don't have a lot of time for this video. There's a lot of other things going on, but you know, I'm still gonna try to make some content on this guy. We'll just have to wait on it a little bit. But let's see what's in this guy. I'm just guessing 10900K. What else could it be? What else could it be? What if it's like the non-K? Come on, let's see it. Let's see it. What do we got? Yay, 10900K, there it is. All right, 10 cores, 20 threads, and with Intel's new thermal velocity boost, it'll actually boost 1 or 2 of the cores up to 5.3 gigahertz, assuming the chip's running cooler than 70 degrees Celsius, which is pretty cool if you can keep it cool. Another cool thing that comes along with 10th gen is Turbo Boost 3.0, which basically identifies the top 2 ranking cores on a chip, basically looks at which 2 cores are the most efficient, and it effectively gives them a nice boost without introducing any additional voltage. So that's gonna help with power consumption and thermals, hopefully. So those are the 2 new boost algorithms that come along with 10th gen. Very interesting stuff. Hopefully combined, we should see, you know, higher single core and dual core performance with those. But it should also be noted that both of those technologies, Turbo Boost 3.0 and Thermal Velocity Boost, are not fully supported on the full stack of 10th gen CPUs. They're generally reserved for the higher end chips, so you'll want to make sure that you know the full list of features that you're getting with whatever particular CPU you decide to go with if you are going to be buying one of these Comet Lake-S processors. So what I'm going to do today, since we don't have time for this guy, we're going to focus strictly on our 10-core flagship 10900K today. And this is going to be interesting because the price point here is pretty much competitive with AMD's Ryzen 9 3900X, which is the CPU that I just put inside Wifey Sauce's new workstation and gaming rig. It's actually right there inside of the Fractal Define 6, and you can see it's slightly modified. I swapped out some things because I actually just finished testing the 3900X for this video, and that's because today I'm going to determine if we should keep the 3900X in Wifey Sauce's build or replace it with Intel's flagship newcomer. So it's going to be kind of a shootout here, $500 CPU battle to see which one will reign supreme and earn a permanent living space inside of Wifey Sauce's system. Now, if this chip manages to beat out the 3900X, that of course means we'll have to swap out the motherboard to a Z490 board, which we have plenty of those to choose from today, but everything else that's currently in her build will pretty much be carried over. The only things that I've changed for testing today is the graphics card, so I swapped it out to a higher end GPU, which is an RTX 2080 Ti ROG Strix model in white. Oh, it's so sexy in white. And I also changed the RAM out to G.Skill kits. That's their Royal RGB DDR4 4000. G.Skill was very happy to send me those, but for whatever reason, the system just wasn't cooperating with that speed. I tried to loosen the timings and stuff. So I've just played it safe this time around and dumped it down to 3600, still a very respectable speed. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So the only thing that will suck kind of is if we go with this chip, assuming that it's better than the 3900X for what we're trying to use the system for, which is mainly workstation compute stuff, then we are going to be losing out on PCIe Gen 4 support. For now, rumor has it that PCIe Gen 4 is going to be coming, is going to be fully supported on the Z490 platform once Rocket Lake comes around, which is of course the next generation after Comet Lake-S. And yeah, it's a long shot, but hypothetically, if the 10900K is that much faster than the 3900X at everything else besides storage compatibility, then giving up PCIe Gen 4 might just be worth it. But we'll have to wait and see what the benchmarks say. You know, I should actually see what Wifey Sauce thinks about all this. It is her system after all. She's over here. In the kitchen as usual. Honey,
Yeah.
guess what I got here?
Our CPU.
Yes, but not just any CPU. It's Intel's newest flagship chip. 10 cores and 20 threads. Boost to 5.3 gigahertz. Exciting, right? But most importantly, it's the direct competitor to the CPU I just put in your new system. So I'm actually gonna pit the two head to head, and whichever one comes out on top is gonna be your new CPU. The point is, you're gonna have the best possible system no matter what. Pretty cool, right?
Sure.
Good job at containing your excitement on the new CPU. Keep it up. Well, you heard it from her, guys. She could not be more thrilled about me working on her new system. I've already finished testing the 3900X, so we just need to build the test bed now for this guy. We've got a couple options here. This is the ASRock Z490PG Velocita. What is that? What's going on there? I have no idea what this means, but it's still more relevant than Fatality, so I'll take it. Asus ROG Maximus 12 Hero. Okay, yeah, it's probably a solid board if the previous Maximus boards are anything to go by. But I have been using a lot of Asus boards lately, so maybe we'll switch it up a bit. Aorus Z490 Aorus Master. I love those finned heat sinks that Aorus puts on some of their high-end motherboards, so this one's definitely in the running. We've got an MSI Meg Z490 iUnify. While it's very cute, and I'm sure I'll use it in some project eventually, I'm probably gonna stay away from Mini ITX for this video. And then we've got another MSI board, the Meg Z490 Godlike. Always a classic, probably a $12 million motherboard, but super loaded with features. Oh, what do you do? What does one do? First world problems, let me tell you guys. You know what, in this case, like I always say, if you can't figure out which motherboard to buy, always pick the one with the best looking box cover. Forget the VRM design and the connectivity. Those are just there to distract you from what really matters. And that is how cool the box looks. Let's do the goblet. Well, hello there, beautiful. Oh, look at this. This board actually has the nice fin stacked heat sinks as well. Very, very nice. I would expect nothing less from MSI's godlike boards. Let's see, what do we got here? Oh, you know it's a fancy motherboard when it's got Thunderbolt 3. 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, no less. Holy moly. We also have a cooling solution. Yes, heat pipes and stuff, that's good. Nice, 18-phase power. Good. 10 gigabit and 2.5 gigabit LAN ports, along with Wi-Fi 6. So 2.5G is standard now on Z490. That's one of the newest additions, along with Wi-Fi 6. Apart from that, there's not a whole lot new with Z490, which is why it's kind of a bummer that 10th gen series CPUs are not backwards compatible with Z390. Lame. I feel like if the board had more PCI Express lanes, or if we had PCIe Gen 4 support now ready to go, then forcing users onto the new platform wouldn't leave such a bad taste in my mouth. But that's just me. Who cares what I say? Let's open this thing up though. Just see how ridiculously amazing it is. It's probably just gonna shoot rainbows out of the socket. Oh man, it's a heavy board. Conductive grid bag. Come on, buddy. Okay, what am I doing here? What am I doing? It's like trying to take off a bra. Godlike. Holy boy, that is a motherboard. Now if you'll just give me 16 hours to take all this plastic wrap off. More like plastic crap. This isn't even like the really satisfying kind of wrap, you know? It's just like too small to really get you going. It's like a gateway wrap. Oh, so unsatisfying. I'm not even taking it all out. It's still pinched under there. Whatever, don't care. Final peel. Beautiful. Oh, I'm tired now. Okay, we gotta keep going though. Let's put this on a box. Just slide her in easy. Get down and locked up. Okay, now we gotta mount some of those components to this board, which means I have to power down. We're swapping boards, cat. Hold on to your tail. 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, there you go. Bleep, bleep. Oh no, the PC's falling. Just kidding. I've actually had a PC fall while doing that, but I just built another one. Come out. There it is. You need to stand up like this so you don't get dirty, because you're white as a snowflake. Why do I sound like Joe Exotic right now?
I may be a bitwit, but at least I'm not a dimwit.
When in doubt, pull out. Oh, stubborn.
Man, swapping motherboards is hard. I should have called Amazon, had them do it. They'd probably do it for cheap, right? Totally not rip me off.
Motherboard installation and uninstallation. The longest screwing session I've ever known.
That big feller's coming for you. I think you're screwed. You tell him to thread lightly. I'm coming out.
Holy Toledo, having this motherboard and these memory sticks together is just one massive flex. This is what we call a big peepee flex.
Damn! Baby, baby, look at them heat sinks. Ooh, baby, baby.
All right, let's see, this is Asetek, right? Is this Asetek? Yes, it's Asetek. Thank the Lord it's Asetek. All right, let's get the plate. Do I have the plates in here? Super.
All of the forgotten Intel backplates are here. Oh, you've been sitting on the high shelf, haven't you?
One more of these suckers. Ha ha! All right, I already put the backplate in because that would be a pain to do one-handed, and we'll just screw these guys in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Seriously, feels like forever since I put together an Intel system. It's really weird. There's nothing more refreshing than a new CPU. This counts as new, right? Do I still remember how to do this? Let's see. Did I do it? Oh, I remember. Just sing the Intel CPU installation song. You put your right arm down, you put your right arm out, you put your right arm up and you lift the bracket too. You place the chip inside so that the arrows both line up. No pressure, just don't f up. Ah yes, fresh thermal pad. Time to break you in. Woohoo! Yahoo! Why do I sound like Mario? Got a WD SN750, 500 gig, NVMe PCIe Gen 3 SSD. Oh no, we're screwed. No, we're not screwed. If we were screwed, we wouldn't be screwed. Screw it! All right, with the SSD mounted, we are ready to install the motherboard. Let's do it. Heavy board, a little nervous. Plus I got all these cables I gotta watch out for. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna need 2 hands here.
Screwing the board keeps on turning. I don't know if I'll get this done by tomorrow.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hold it any longer. All right, big boy, move aside for your arch nemesis.
You know, this isn't what I imagined when you said you were going down on.
Firm, even pressure, boys. Firm, even pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, mister. Thank you for waiting to be seated.
Shunk.
You know, it's kind of weird that this GPU is the only white thing in here, but I've been told the black ones don't fit.
Sweet.
And then we got Windows 10. Now all you gotta do is scoot it and boot it. Make sure that the power supply's turned on first. Scoot it and boot it. Here we go. All right, give me a sign. Is it double booting? Just turned off. There it goes. Ooh, look at that fancy dragon.
Fancy dragon stuff. Godlike.
Oh, shoot. I've been doing that a lot lately, haven't I? Okay. Hey, there it is. All right, we're gonna do a clean install of Windows. I'm gonna update the BIOS, make sure our drivers and games are installed, and then run some tests. I got a whole smorgasbord of benchmarks to get through, but if you're watching this, it means I've already done them. So let's talk about them now? Yes, let's talk about them now. Cue jazz hand. Actually, before we look at the results, I wanted to mention that I am using stock settings for both AMD and Intel here. AMD and Intel platforms work a little bit differently. With Intel motherboards, board partners often include their own boosting technologies, or they'll change the power limit values in order to increase the performance of Intel CPUs, but that also takes them completely out of spec. So since our 3900X is running completely stock, I've reverted all of the settings that MSI pre-configured into their BIOS on this godlike motherboard to Intel's stock settings. That includes the power limit, PL1, PL2 values, voltage, and so forth, so we have a completely even playing field. Now the first slide we're taking a look at is temperatures, and I sort of calculated this by doing an average across 10 different applications that included gaming, both gaming and compute workloads, and I basically averaged out those 10 results for each CPU. The 3900X averaged at 79.5 degrees Celsius across our tests, which is pretty toasty. Bear in mind that it did run over 80 degrees Celsius in some of the tests. It's definitely a reminder that Precision Boost Overdrive is a pretty aggressive algorithm, and you do need some good cooling if you want to run this chip to its fullest. The 10900K, however, stayed pretty cool at 72.3 degrees Celsius, definitely beating out its competitor here. But remember, these are running at Intel spec settings. Had I left MSI's BIOS settings intact, we'd definitely be seeing higher temps on our Core i9 chip. Moving on to power draw, these figures represent the full system power draw during a Blender BMW 27 test. These are the peak values that I saw on my kilowatt, with the 3900X going up to 239 watts, and the 10900K hitting 311 watts. Since Blender is heavily CPU intensive, this of course shows us that the 10900K does consume quite a bit more power than its AMD counterpart. At this point, it's kind of hard for Intel to improve their power efficiency significantly because they're still on 14 nanometer. They're really going to need to shrink down the process node if they want to see more gains, meaningful gains when it comes to power efficiency. Whereas the 3900X is on that smooth and sexy 7 nanometer arc, and as you see here, it's definitely doing it some favors in that department. Moving on to CINEBENCH R20, our first synthetic test. Here we have multi-threaded and single-threaded performance, with the 3900X scoring 7,295 on the multi-thread, compared to the 10900K's 5,864 points. That is quite the landslide. The 10900K takes the lead in single-threaded performance, but it's by a much smaller margin. Definitely goes to show just how far AMD has come when it comes to single-threaded performance and catching up to Intel in that area. Our next test is CPUMARK's Passmark 9. This is another synthetic compute-focused benchmark, and in the overall score, we once again see the 3900X dominating here, where more than one cores is being used, whereas the 10900K gets the upper hand in single-threaded performance, but the lead isn't quite as impressive as it is with the 3900X. Our first kind of real-world test is Adobe Premiere Pro using Media Encoder, and lower is better here because we're measuring the seconds it took to render my 10-minute 1920 by 1080 file, or project I should say, with H.264 encoding at 35 kilobits per second. You can see the 3900X did really well, encoding the project in just 331 seconds compared to the whopping 611 seconds it took the 10900K. The 3900X is absolutely killing it here, leaving the 10900K in the dust. Now the file that was rendered out with the Adobe Premiere Pro test is actually the same file that I used for my HANDBRAKE test. So I took that file and encoded it with the fast 1920 by 1080p preset at 30 frames per second, and here's what we got. 3900X, once again, wiping the floor with the 10900K. This is definitely a good showcase for the 3900X, showing that it still has the upper hand when it comes to rendering. In the Blender Splash Fishy Cat demo, we saw the 3900X pulling ahead of the 10900K slightly. I ran the test multiple times for each CPU, and I consistently got these results. I was actually expecting the 3900X to do a lot better, considering the results that we just saw, but computers are weird sometimes. Or the PC gods just thought the 10900K could use a break. With the Blender BMW 27 test, we go back to business as usual, with the 3900X crushing it, rendering the project in 118 seconds, versus the 10900K's 144. But let's talk about gaming performance. Starting with Firestrike Ultra, we've got the 3900X delivering 8,565 points in its overall score versus the 10900K scoring slightly higher at 8,753. The Core i9 also wins in the graphics department with a score of 8,481 versus the Ryzen parts 8,311. The lead here for Intel isn't a huge one, but it definitely paints a picture of what's to come with our other gaming tests, like TimeSpy. The 3900X just traveling barely behind the 10900K, getting an overall score of 14,146 versus 14,469 on the Core i9 chip. Intel's graphics score is a little bit higher here as well. Our first actual game title is Ashes of the Singularity, and I tested at 1920 by 1080 as well as 2560 by 1440p, both 16 by 9 resolutions. Our 3900X, if we're taking a look at just the black bars right now, that's 1080p numbers, the 3900X scored an average frame rate of 92 and a 1% low of 50 versus the 10900K scoring 103 frames per second on average and 61 FPS with its 1% lows. I wouldn't call this a landslide for Intel, but it's definitely outperforming the 3900X, as we probably expected it would if the 9900K was anything to go by. Looking at the red bars, which is our 1440p results, you can see that the numbers don't really change much coming from 1080p, indicating a potential CPU bottleneck. Our RTX 2080 Ti is an absolute beast that's simply writing checks way too quickly for either of our CPUs to cache, which is why we don't really see a frame rate bump going down to 1080p. In Far Cry 5, the 10900K sees its most commanding lead in all of our testing, getting an average FPS of 163 when we're at 1080p versus 127 FPS with the 3900X. That's an enormous lead and makes a good case for the 10900K if you're going to be gaming at 1080p and targeting really high frame rates. Of course, it's maybe a little harder to imagine someone gaming at 1080p if they're purchasing a $500 CPU, but I'm sure those users are out there somewhere. The 3900X gets beat out at 1440p as well, getting an average frame rate of 122 versus 138 on the Core i9. Obviously, the performance gap is closed quite a bit here as we get more GPU bound with the higher resolution. Oddly enough, the 1% lows for the 10900K at 1440p aren't performing quite on par with the 1% lows of the 3900X, which means that the AMD chip does have slightly better frame times here overall, which may lead to slightly smoother playback. Okay, maybe I should take back what I said. I think Shadow of the Tomb Raider is where the 10900K sees its biggest lead. At 1080p, it delivers 119 frames per second versus just 89 with the 3900X. That is 30 frames. That's a lot. Even at 1440p, it does a tremendous job here, going from 83 FPS on the 3900X to 102 with the Core i9. This reaffirms that Intel's flagship Core i9 part is still the gaming champion and can see some phenomenal leads in specific titles. I gotta say, the 10900K's 1% lows deliver a devastating blow here to the competition, getting over 60 FPS, whereas the 1% lows on the 3900X are the prime reason Viagra exists, as it just can't get it up over 50. In the Division 2, the 3900X once again takes a back seat with an average FPS at 1080p of 125 versus 135 with Intel. That's not a huge lead, and neither is it a big lead at 1440p, as we are becoming more GPU dependent, going from 92 FPS with AMD up to 97 with Intel. At 1440p, Intel does have the better frame times, however, as it does have some pretty healthy 1% lows respective to its average frame rate. In Borderlands 3, the 10900K sees marginal gains this time around, with the 3900X averaging 179 FPS at 1080p versus 187 FPS with the 10900K, and there's virtually nothing to distinguish the chips from one another at 1440p, as we become heavily GPU bound at this point, with both the CPUs just sitting around with their thumbs up their butts. Now here's a final breakdown summary of all the data compiled so we can get a single snapshot view of where these CPUs excel, which categories they excel in, and by how much. So when it comes to gaming, the 10900K is the clear victor here, and I don't think anyone is going to be blindsided by this. The 9900K was already faster in games than the 3900X, so it just follows naturally that its successor would be faster than it as well. See, at 1080p, the 10900K delivers 15.5% more frames on average than the 3900X, and at 1440p, it delivers roughly 10% more frames on average. These aren't landslide numbers. 15.5% is definitely a bit more alluring than 10%, but then again, there's also the question of, who's going to be gaming at 1080p with a $500 CPU. Still, if achieving the absolute highest frame rates possible is your #1 priority, then the 10900K is the clear choice. But if you're going to game and do workstation stuff, or simply just do workstation stuff, then I would gravitate towards the 3900X because it's the more well-rounded CPU. It has really good gaming performance that's just not quite as fast as Intel, but it absolutely slaughters it in several other areas. I can't help but feel that the results we're seeing from the 10900K are simply echoing those of the 9900K that came before it, because they're basically made up of the same DNA. One just has 2 more cores, 4 more threads, and a few other little tricks up its sleeve, but those don't really make it a brand new chip, so to speak. And so the conclusion is kind of the same as it was with the 9900K versus the 3900X. Everything that I just said. If you're gaming and that's all you care about, go Intel. For everything else and more, AMD. But obviously debating between CPUs is kind of just half the battle, right? Or half the question, rather. You should also be considering the platforms. They're very different, AMD and Intel, with their platform philosophies and how they do things. I still think that AMD is the stronger platform right now with AM4, especially because they just announced that their 400 series motherboards are now going to be forward compatible with the upcoming Zen 3 Ryzen 4000 series processors, which they previously said wouldn't be compatible at all. It could be a complete lockout, but they've since retracted their statement and they're adding support for it, which is great news for everyone who has a 400 series motherboard. And while I'm just shooting in the dark here, this move by AMD could mean this is how they're going to do things for their platforms from now on, where a single platform, a single chipsetted motherboard could potentially last for 3 CPU generations, which would be fantastic. That's a move that we haven't seen Intel do in recent history. So from the way things are looking right now, I think in terms of platform flexibility and having an upgrade path, AMD definitely has the stronger option. We know that Intel's 11th gen processors, codenamed Rocket Lake, will be supported on Z490, and that's when we'll get PCIe Gen 4 support in full, but it remains to be seen if Z490 is going to then support the generation of CPUs to follow that. If history is anything to go by, probably not. but you never know what competition can make Intel do. They've already done a lot of things in response to AMD so far. So we'll just have to wait and see about that. In addition to lower costs and a better upgrade path, the AM4 platform also has better features in my opinion. Things like PCIe Gen 4, that's available now on X570 and is going to be available on the budget-oriented B550 boards that are around the corner. That's awesome. You'll be able to take advantage of really fast NVMe speeds without having to pay an arm and a leg. Whereas Intel, even on Z490, they don't even have full support for it yet. Also, you have up to more PCI Express lanes on Ryzen's mainstream platform than you do on Intel's currently. Given the data we've seen today and various platform considerations, I think I know which CPU I'm sticking with for Wifey Sauce's build. But we should get her take. I'm sure she's dying to weigh in on this. Okay, honey, the results are in. We've got data on both of the CPUs, and I want to just show you the summary graph of all the data that I compiled. This is the champion CPU for each category.
That's what I was gonna say. So obviously, for when it comes to gaming, Intel won. When it comes to editing, AMD won.
Right.
When it comes to, like you said, some gaming, Intel won.
Yes.
And again, this is related to editing, so AMD won. So basically you're saying that the Intel CPU is better for gaming and the AMD CPU is better for like editing and Photoshop and stuff like that.
You've come so far. I couldn't be more proud.
So at the end of the day, I'd choose AMD. Because I help you edit videos and now I'm editing my own videos.
Right.
So it'd be a smarter choice for me to choose the AMD CPU over the Intel CPU.
Okay, what do you think about the percentage values that are on each of these figures?
I don't think they're that high. It doesn't really, like 10%, 15%, does it really make that big a difference? Is it really worth it to switch over to Intel over AMD for such a small percentage?
Why am I even shooting this video? I should just, you're shooting every big launch video from now on. You just summarized in 10 seconds what took me 15 hours to do.
Woo! 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 Okay, can I go to bed now?
Yes.
Taking the cat with me.
There's a cat in here? Yes, take her with you. She's stealing my chairs. Let me know what you guys think about 10th gen so far, and if there's any specific content ideas you'd like me to try with these new chips, whether it be specific kinds of testing or a build perhaps, let me know down below. Toss a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Get subscribed for more tech content on the way, and I'll see y'all in the next video.